A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Before we dive into the tapestry of the story, I would like to inform the reader that this novel is narrated in 3 books. Book 2. The Muslim Apostate Girl and Her Christian Infidel Lover. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real life of a Muslim girl in Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 6. The Devastation of the Terrorist Attacks. Dr. Ibtihal went through the most difficult time in her life during those 24 hours that followed her arrest. She had desperately tried, by all means, to keep her criminal record in Sudan out of the picture. She was able to convince the police that she was born and brought up in Sudan. She said her family was once a nomadic people, but settled in Libya when she was a little girl. However, she could not be able to convince the Greek police why did she come to Athens. Why did she enter the country with a fake travel visa? Her passport was genuine, but her visa was a work of forgery. The thorough interrogations continued until noon on the next day. While the Greek police interrogators were focusing their investigations on Dr. Ibtihal and her other 4 roommates, the Muslim terrorists were able to carry out their cowardly attacks on the city. 2 government buildings were completely destroyed, and many people were buried under the rubble. Some people had been pulled alive from under the debris. Their appearances were so horrific that it would be hard to describe them without their severed limbs or irreparably damaged bodies. The 2 collapsed towers were the tallest 2 skyscrapers in downtown Athens. The other 2 separate terrorist attacks were carried in a passenger train and a cinema hall. Many people were killed and hundreds were injured. The 5th attack was directed at Athens International Airport. This attack did not do so much damage to the airport premises nor cause many casualties in human lives as the other ones did. The city of Athens was turned into a war zone between the terrorists and the police. The terrorists could be able to carry their evil attacks successfully on the city while the police could not be able to stop them. The police interpreted the attacks in this way. The police had information that some Muslim terrorists were about to carry out deadly attacks on the city. This intelligence was gathered through intercepting a phone call made by a young woman from the Muslim women's shelter in the city. The information reached the police at the right time. The police moved immediately and arrested 50 female suspects in the women's shelter. However, it appeared later on that the phone call was made to avoid the attention of the police. 5 of those 50 suspects misguided some top commanders in the police force. Instead of searching for the Muslim terrorists and laying hands on them before they could carry their vicious attacks, the police focused its efforts on extracting information from those suspects. Meanwhile, a citywide search was carried out throughout Athens and its suburbs. The police could not be able to arrest any new suspects. While the interrogations were going on, the terrorists carried out their cowardly attacks. Further investigation revealed that some young Arab Muslim women had carried out all 5 attacks. Cars and trucks were used in the 1st, 2nd, and 5th attacks. The 3rd and 4th attacks were suicidal missions. The new discovery made the case of the 5 suspects from the Muslim women's shelter more difficult and complicated. The police became more determined to get further information from those Muslim girls. No matter how hard the police tried, they could not be able to get any further information to lead them to the true culprits who plotted and carried out the 5 terrorist attacks. The information began and ended in that women's shelter only. After 3 days were passed since some young Muslim women viciously carried out terrorist attacks on the city of Athens, the CIA had sent to Greece a team of experts in the Middle East terrorism. At first, the Greek police authority refused to cooperate with that American team for some undisclosed reasons. Firstly, the Greek police failed to stop the attacks even though they knew ahead of time that the city was going to be attacked soon by some Arab Muslim terrorists. Secondly, until then the Greek police could not figure out how the attacks were planned and how they were carried out. Thirdly, if the CIA team could unearth the plan and lead to further arrests, then that would be a stigma in the Greek police intelligence. When the Greek police could not be able to push the information beyond the women's shelter, they accepted their failure and hence decided to involve the CIA. Before doing so, they decided first to check with the countries of origin of those 5 prime suspects. They contacted the Libyan, Egyptian, Jordanian, Sudanese, and Moroccan embassies. They demanded some information about those detainees. 3 of those embassies supplied accurate information except the Libyan. Somalia was a failed state, and therefore it had no embassy in Athens to contact. The Libyan embassy could not supply any accurate information about a family by the name of Al-Zubair al-Rashadia. That family name was quite common in Libya. There were thousands of girls by the name of Mastura al-Zubair al-Rashadia. There were hundreds of passports issued to women by that name. The girl in question had a true and valid passport issued to her by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tripoli city. The girl's address in the passport was fake. There was no address like this in Tripoli. This information about Mastura, who was also called Ibtihal, motivated a new investigation in her case. Finally, the Greek police had decided to refer her case to the Sudanese embassy. Her photo and a copy of her Libyan passport along with some information were sent to the ambassador of Sudan in Athens. The ambassador knew nothing of what had happened in his country in the past few months. Therefore, he forwarded that dossier to the Khartoum police. The Khartoum police was immediately able to identify the fugitive woman for whom they had recently not left a stone unturned in their citywide search for her. Then they had quickly fabricated an official report and sent it to their ambassador in Athens and demanded that the Greek police should extradite the fugitive young woman in question back to her country of origin as soon as possible. Chapter 7. The report of the police of Sudan. At once, the Sudanese ambassador had forwarded the official report of the police of Khartoum to the police of Athens. The report was read in front of a meeting in the police headquarters, which was attended by top commanders and experts in Islamic terrorism and foreign crimes investigation. The report reads as follows. The woman in question, Ibtihal Taha al-Amin, was born and raised in Sudan. She had never left Sudan until recently. She was involved in a murder case. She was tried and convicted by the Khartoum Criminal Court and sentenced to death. During her transfer from the prison to the place of her execution, she managed to escape with the help of some gunmen. That fugitive Muslim woman had a Christian lover who conspired with her in the murder of her own father. The father objected to the relationship of his daughter to her lover because her boyfriend was a Christian man, and his daughter was a Muslim woman. Her father's objection is legally justifiable because it is unlawful in Sudan for a Christian man to marry a Muslim woman. This restriction is based on the teachings of the Holy Quran and the blessed hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, may the prayers and peace of Allah be upon him. Even so, to play around with that religious restriction, the Christian man was able to deceive the Muslim woman and turned her against her religion. When the father learned about the apostasy of his daughter and her conversion to Christianity, and she was ready to marry her Christian lover Samir Peter Deng, he contracted her in an Islamic halal marriage to her cousin who was a man by the name of Tariq Omar al-Amin. This is because the Islamic Sharia law allows the Muslim father to give his virgin daughter in marriage to any man without her consent. Then the Christian man abducted the married Muslim daughter from her Muslim husband's house, and took her to the Sudanese-Eritrean border where the two runaway lovers were arrested for illegally crossing the border. The Christian man was convicted by the Sharia court in Khartoum of kidnap and rape of a married Muslim woman, and sentenced to 100 lashes and 1 year imprisonment. After he served his prison sentence and received his corporeal punishment, the Christian lover conspired with the Muslim apostate woman, and both of them murdered the father. The Muslim woman was arrested, but the Christian man is still in the run. The woman went through a fair trial and admitted her involvement in the murder of her father. She confessed that she was the one who convinced her lover to conspire with her in the brutal murder of her own father. She said she killed her father because he forced her to marry her cousin. Therefore, she was convicted by the criminal court and sentenced to death. The court also convicted her Christian lover of murder and sentenced him in his absence to 14 years imprisonment. Accordingly, we request the Greek police to extradite this indicted criminal woman as soon as possible to Sudan. The report was written and signed by the police commissioner of Khartoum City. "This report doesn't make any sense to me," said one of the experts in foreign crime investigation. "Besides that, it makes our case more difficult. For months ago, this Muslim woman was in love with a Christian man, and for his sake, she left her religion and became an apostate. Then she conspired with her Christian lover and murdered her own Muslim father. Today, she is held in our custody in connection with the recent Islamic terrorist attacks on Athens. Most probably the Sudanese police confuse this woman with another woman they are looking for," said another expert. "I don't like the way this report was written. It was not written in chronological order, and it is full of contradictions," said yet another expert. "I think the Khartoum police are lying in their report," said another expert. "I have a suggestion to make. We must admit that we cannot handle this case alone, and must involve the CIA. They are the people who can get direct access to any file in any country. At the September 11th terrorist attacks on New York, they managed to have access to the police file of Osama bin Laden when he spent 2 years in Sudan before he fled to Afghanistan and formed his terrorist group called Al-Qaeda. Why can't they do it for us now?" said the chairman of the meeting. "I fully agree with Mr. Chairman. If we believe this nonsense they sent to us and send back to them this primarily suspected Muslim woman, they will kill her for sure. Then our investigations will die with her. Now she is the only one whose case is still unsolved," said one of the experts. "The Sudanese police want to free this woman from our hands. Most probably, the government of that country behind those Muslim terrorist attacks. After all, Sudan is one of the 7 countries declared by the American administration of President Donald Trump as the source of terrorism in the world and forbade its citizens from entering the United States of America," said the chairman. All the police commanders and the experts in Islamic terrorism and foreign crimes investigations approved the suggestion of the chairman, and the case of the terrorist attacks on Athens is referred to the CIA, Chapter 8. The investigations are moved abroad. As soon as the mysterious terrorist attacks case had been given to them, the members of the CIA team had transferred the investigations overseas. A team of experts in terrorism was sent to Khartoum to investigate the terrorist attacks that led the Greek police to arrest a Muslim girl from Sudan. The Khartoum police gave the CIA team the same report that they sent to Athens. The team informed them that they had already obtained a copy of that report. What they wanted to investigate was the Sharia court trial that condemned Ibtihal to death. If the report was true, then it had to be supported by court proceedings. The Khartoum police said the court trials in Sudan are held as confidential matters. The CIA team did not accept that excuse. Trials all over the world are conducted publicly. Why only the case of this apostate Muslim woman is kept as top secret? The Khartoum police refused to allow the CIA team to have access to the police file and trial proceedings of the convicted woman. The investigation would have ended there if it were not for a small mistake that occurred. During those dealings, one of the CIA members requested a top officer in the Khartoum police to give them the names and addresses of the judge and his jurymen who conducted the trial, and the lawyer who defended the condemned Muslim apostate woman. The officer said the trial was conducted in the Sharia court without a lawyer. The given reason is that the religious court in the Muslim countries would not allow a lawyer to represent any suspect. The suspect himself has to defend his case and supply his evidence and witnesses. The CIA team had already knowledge of this because they had dealt in the past with terrorist cases in some of the Middle East and North African countries. Since there was a court, at least there should be a judge. The Khartoum police said that some gunmen who kidnapped the indicted woman from the police and helped her to escape had murdered the judge who condemned and sentenced her to be hanged to death. The police further said that the same gunman broke into the house of the judge and murdered him in the same gallows the condemned woman was supposed to be put to death publicly. This last information was the blunder that made by the Khartoum police officer and solved the mysterious case of the condemned woman. The same CIA member who questioned the Sudanese police officer had read a few months ago a small article issued by the Sudan Human Rights Watch spoke of a case similar to the one in question. The CIA member remembered that the article stated that a girl in Sudan was condemned by a religious court to public execution because she changed her religion from Islam to Christianity. The article mentioned further that instead of the condemned girl, the judge was executed publicly in her place. The member recollected that the article was short and brief and did not give many details. Even so, that recollection was enough evidence for any smart CIA officer to link the two cases together and draw a conclusion. After drawing a conclusion, the CIA member contacted the Sudan Human Rights Watch office in Juba City and requested them to send him a copy of their issue that was published a few months ago, which spoke about a Sudanese Muslim apostate girl who was condemned to death by a judge of an Islamic religious court in Sudan for her conversion to Christianity, and instead of her, the judge was executed publicly. The CIA member requested further that the office should supply any additional information they knew about the case of that Muslim apostate girl. This request was faxed to the Sudan Human Rights Watch office in Juba and marked as urgent. A few hours later, the Sudanese Human Rights Watch office faxed back over 50 detailed pages to the CIA member. The American team first exposed the matter publicly through some foreign media, and then confronted the Khartoum police with the shameful lies that they sent in their report to the police of Athens. The Khartoum police reluctantly admitted that some members of the police had lied in their report with the intention to get the condemned woman back to Sudan to face her death penalty. Moreover, they said the same woman was involved in the murder of 13 policemen and policewomen, who were brutally killed by the gunmen who helped her to escape her punishment. Those gangsters had burned through truck explosion 8 of those police officers and shot dead 4 guards and 1 policeman, who was the driver of the police wagon. Then they had stolen their police wagon, motorbikes, and weapons. Despite this information, the CIA team had ignored the complaint of the Sudanese police and considered the investigations in Khartoum finished, and they soon moved back to Athens. Chapter 9. The escape of the fugitive Christian men out of Khartoum. It is high time to find out what happened to Dr. Samir after such a long period of time. The gang leader Haber had already told the infidel Christian lover Samir Peter Deng that the smuggling of his Muslim apostate girlfriend Ibtihal Taha Alamin out of Sudan and sending her to a Western country might take a quite long time. After long waiting, the caravan of the Rashida men who smuggled the prison escapee Dr. Ibtihal to Libya had returned back to Sudan and handed over to Haber the letter that was written and signed by his beloved girlfriend on the same night she had begun her sea voyage out of Libya and headed towards Greece. He also brought with him another letter signed by Dr. Ibtihal while she was in the city of Athens and living in the Arab young women's shelter. It was the same letter that had been written by the Libyan woman's sister Sakina, and signed by the Libyan girl Mestora herself. The 2 letters brought indescribable joy to the heart of Dr. Samir. He considered the deal between him and the gang of Haber had ended successfully, and hence he paid the rest of the $25,000 to the ringleader. In all this time, the fugitive Dr. Samir never thought of escaping out of Khartoum. He waited until his miraculously escaped beloved girlfriend reached a safe haven in the West. The letters that she sent were the safe sanctuary and refuge for him. After that, Dr. Samir began to think of how to get out of Khartoum first, and then out of Sudan. He had no one left in Sudan. His relationship with his family in the south had ended on that day, when he came to know that his own Christian sister Susan Peter Deng had handed his Arab fiancé Ibtihal Taha Alamin to the Muslim soldiers to kill her as a traitor, and a Muslim apostate girl. Consequently, Dr. Samir decided first to flee out of Khartoum city. He planned his escape on the same night he received the 2 letters from his beloved Princess Ibtihal. He carefully disguised himself before he stepped out of his hiding place. He grew a long beard that made him look like a Muslim brother. Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist political party that seized power in Sudan through coup d'état in 1989. They were still in power when the events of this story took place. Dr. Samir also changed his hairstyle. He put on a Sudanese Islamic dress called galabia, which looked like a Saudi woman's abaya or Afghani woman's burqa. He folded around his head a big white turban. He carried in his left hand prayer beads, and on his right hand a copy of the Quran. He pretended to be a devout Muslim man. He had never dressed up like that before. He always used to put on full suits, trousers, shirts, and ties. That night even his beloved girlfriend Ibtihal would not have recognized him if she met him face to face. Dr. Samir began his flight at 4 a.m. He took a taxi from in front of the house of Haber. He asked the taxi driver to take him to a certain place in the city. When the taxi drove him to that certain place, he got off. After waiting for a while, he took another cab. He requested the new cabbie to take him to another address. In that way, he changed 5 taxis before he reached the final destination he intended to go to. The last taxi drove him near the Khartoum General Hospital. From there he walked on foot until he reached the Khartoum General Railway Station. When he arrived at the railway station it was already 9:30 a.m. He had to wait for only half an hour before the departure of the Nyala train. It was the same train of death that his beloved Princess Ibtihal had taken to travel to her unknown destination a year ago when she fled from the north and headed towards the south in search of his Christian family over there. Dr. Samir knew that if he waited in Haber's house and booked a ticket for a good class on the train, he might be identified by the police or passengers during the long trip. His best chance of escaping without being identified and arrested was to bury himself in the filled-to-the-brim 4th class. In all his life, he had never been on a train. He always traveled by expensive buses and airplanes. But now he was a wanted criminal and on the run. Therefore, he knew and understood that his only chance of a safe exit from the capital city was to travel by that notorious Nyala train. When he reached the station, the 4th class was already full to its maximum capacity. He had to fight his way to get on the train. The bad odor of the stuffed compartment had almost caused him to suffocate to death. Luckily, the specialized physician Samir brought some antibiotics and over-counter medicine with him. Dr. Samir was not as lucky as his beloved girlfriend Dr. Ibtihal. The dissident princess was lucky enough to get a window seat in that crowded 4th class. She spent the whole night waiting for her departure while her lover spent only 30 minutes before the train of death left the capital city. Dr. Samir did not find even a seat to occupy. All benches were over-occupied. 7 passengers forcibly occupied each bench. Each bench was designed to accommodate 3 passengers only. The 4th class in Nyala train had no chairs. It had things, neither chairs nor benches. I preferred to give those undefinable objects the names of benches because they were closer to pews in a church than chairs in a bus. When the train began to move, Dr. Samir doubted that he would be able to survive in that situation for another hour. He was standing between the benches and sweating terribly. He was breathing with much difficulty. His legs could not support him for long. He felt dizzy and became nauseated. He would have fallen down if there was space for him to fall. He could not put his hand inside his pocket and take out some medicine to drink. In that half-conscious state, he survived until the train reached the first stop after half an hour. Dr. Samir had decided to cancel his trip. He managed to force his way out of the crowded compartment. When he reached the door, the train began to move. For those who traveled by Nyala train, the worst place to stand in was near the door when the train began to move slowly out of the station. The door was coverless. It was only an entrance without a door. That was the place where all the bad activities would be done. A person could be robbed, raped, killed, pushed, or smashed. A woman, whatever her age, would be gang-raped in broad daylight. Luckily, only the last evil had happened to the fugitive physician. He was pressed by the crowd against the wooden wall of the compartment. If there was a place for him to fall, he would have been killed through a stampede. He was feeling unbearable pain. He knew he had to endure that agonizing pain until the train reached another station. Due to that excruciating torture, he wished that he would be given a chance to jump out of the running train and kill himself and gain rest. Once again, Dr. Samir was lucky to survive until the train made another halt. He managed to force his way out of the fourth compartment. When he got down, he felt as if he came out of a dirty garbage container, or emerged from the filthiest sewer, or dirtiest cesspool in the world. His body brought with it all the dirtiness and the pungent odor of the passengers of the fourth class. He found a place in the crowded station and sat. He made up his mind to discontinue his escape. He did not know what to do or where to go in that small town. He knew that town was too close to the capital city. It had fewer inhabitants. It would be easy for any cop or person to recognize him. He read in the local newspaper, the police of Khartoum had put a bounty of 500 billion Sudanese pounds over his head. For that huge amount of money, any Sudanese man would hand to the police even his own son or daughter or brother or sister. While Dr. Samir was sitting and pondering on what to do, he saw the train begin to move slowly from the station. He understood that his chance of escaping would move with that train in a few minutes. At that critical moment, he saw some passengers sitting on the roof of the train. Without hesitating for a second, he got up and chased after Nyala train. He managed to jump on the train in time. Immediately, he went behind some adventurous passengers and climbed onto the roof of one of the compartments of the fourth class. As soon as he found a space and sat, the train emerged out of the small town with full speed like a surface-to-surface fired missile. Dr. Samir felt so refreshed when his lungs were filled with the fragrance of fresh air. From his high position, he could see the beautiful scenery of the green farms and the Al Jazeera province's Arab girls grazing their cattle in the green pasture. From his elevation, he lifted his right hand and waved it to those pretty shepherd girls. Some of the lovely girls had waved their hands to him, and some felt shy to greet a man. Dr. Samir smiled and said to himself, if I had to pay $1 million, I might not be able to enjoy such beauty of nature and see those lovely shepherd Arab girls with their cattle. Chapter 10. Traveling by the slowest lorry in the world. The slow train of death arrived in Nyala city after 5 days. Dr. Samir felt as if he had been buried in the ground and exhumed out of his grave as a zombie. His white clothes became yellow, and his body was full of dust and mud. It was the longest trip he had ever undertaken in all his life. Despite his miserable condition, he considered it one of the most enjoyable trips he ever took. He continued his long journey from Khartoum City to Nyala City on the roof of the train. During his never-ending voyage, he saw people of different colors and different cultures in every province and city the train had passed by. He enjoyed the beauty of nature as well as the beauty of the shepherd young women. Whenever he felt hungry or thirsty, he got down in a station and bought his food and drink. He learned how to sleep on the roof of the train without falling off at night. He even became friendly with some acquaintances on the roof. All his acquaintances told him he made a big mistake by purchasing a ticket and sitting inside that hellish fourth class. They said they never bought tickets whenever they traveled by Nyala train. They knew no ticket conductor would ever dare to climb on the roof and check the passengers. If he did, he would be pushed from the train of death and fall and break his neck and die in a jungle full of hyenas, and eaten half dead by wolves, and his blood would be upon his shoulders. Most of Dr. Samir's acquaintances spoke broken and funny Arabic that he enjoyed hearing very much. The 5-day journey was not always pleasant. Some difficulties had faced the roof travelers on the way. Most of those difficulties were caused by natural disasters. Among all of them, the rain had given the roof passengers a tough time. Dr. Samir could forget everything in his life except one sad incident when he saw a young boy fall off the roof while the train was running at full speed. No one was able to do anything to rescue that young man. The last thing he saw about that unlucky young lad was that his body kept bouncing up and down in the sandy desert like a soccer ball bouncing in the playground. As soon as the train arrived at Nyala City, Dr. Samir thanked God that his first exit was successful. He decided to rest for a couple of days before he could resume his escape to freedom. He found a small motel and booked a room for 2 days. He registered his name as Taha Al-Amin. He chose to name himself after the name of his beloved girlfriend's late father because it reminded him of her. During those 2 days, he stayed inside his room most of the time. He ventured out of the motel only once. On the second day, he went to a nearby small shop and bought a ready-made dress like the one he was wearing. Later, he would discover that he made a big mistake by wearing those Islamic clothes in Darfur province. Dr. Samir planned to escape through Chad. He wanted to cross the border and enter Chadian soil. He knew that was the only border where the Sudanese authority had no control. In fact, at the time Dr. Samir had made the decision of his escape out of Sudan, the Darfur region was in chaos. The notorious Janjaweed militiamen were carrying on those mass killings, lootings, raping and burning down the villages and towns of the African Muslims. The bloodthirsty Janjaweed were also black Sudanese, but they claimed to be pure Arabs. The Fur rebels were attacking the military bases and Arab civilians. The military soldiers were carrying out airstrikes on the Fur habitats. Some outlaw people mostly from the tribes of Zaghawa and other Sudanese known as Hambata were doing highway robberies. So the entire region of Darfur was in chaos and turmoil. As a matter of fact, Dr. Samir chose to escape through the most dangerous region on earth. On the morning of the 3rd day, the fugitive Christian man resumed his plan to escape out of the country. His next trip would be through a cargo and passenger truck. He went to the truck's station and booked a seat. He had to travel to Junaina City. Junaina was the second largest city in Darfur province. It was located exactly on the Sudanese-Chadian border. Therefore, the majority of its inhabitants were called Masalit because their ancestors were originally from the region of Dar Muslat in Chad. The lorry that Dr. Samir decided to travel in was fully loaded with sacks of grains, human beings, and their domestic animals. The passengers were expected to sit on top of those sacks and see to it they would not fall off while the truck was running along the rough gravel road. The wanted fugitive man Dr. Samir wished to flee to Chad and seek refugee status as a religiously persecuted and condemned Christian man. He also decided to use the case of his Muslim apostate girlfriend Ibtihal, who was condemned to be hanged to death, to support his application for a refugee asylum. The truck was not fast like the Nyala train. It usually traveled on rough gravel roads. Even though the road was exceedingly difficult to drive on, still, the truck driver would keep going on. The passengers in this situation would be shaking, jerking, jumping up and down, and hitting over everything. Sometimes, due to the rough gravel road, a passenger might be thrown from the truck. If something like that happened to any passenger, the truck must stop and pick up that fallen person whether he was alive or dead. He would not be left to die of hunger and thirst, and for the wild beasts and the vultures to feast on his dead body, as in the case of the Nyala train. The most difficult hardship which usually annoyed the truck passengers was the thorny trees. While the truck was passing under those thorny trees, the passengers would experience the worst during their hazardous trip. Their clothes would become rags and their bodies would be full of bruises. Sometimes, those thorny trees might strip someone's clothes and leave him half naked. On that trip, when the fugitive Sudanese doctor traveled in that slow truck, the thorny trees had stripped a young passenger woman of her dress and forced her to travel while her breasts, thighs, and buttocks were exposed. Also, many other male passengers got deprived of their clothes. In the meantime, Dr. Samir was sitting with a group of passengers on the top of a fully loaded lorry, and thus his second journey to liberty began. As soon as the lorry passed the outskirts of Nyala city, the wanted fugitive doctor knew that he made a big mistake again. The lorry's tires kicked off the dust and buried the passengers under a cyclone of devil dust. The lungs of every passenger were filled with that dusty atmosphere. Every passenger began to cough violently. Dr. Samir's lungs were not accustomed to this kind of dusty ambience. He did not only cough, but his tears started to run out of his eyes like hot acid. To protect his lungs and eyes, he removed his turban and used it as a covering on his face. Besides the dust, the lorry's engine was making a deafening sound. Some of the passengers who were used to this kind of travel were shouting to each other while they were engaged in friendly banter of conversations. Some of them made fun of the cityman Dr. Samir when they saw him coughing and weeping, and his eyes were running rivers of tears. Small babies were screaming and causing havoc. Domestic animals such as dogs, goats, sheep, and chickens were screaming, woof woof, ba ba, and cackle diddle doo, cackle diddle doo. Besides closing his nose and eyes, Dr. Samir closed his ears too. But in doing that, he was not so successful because the lorry was jerking and swinging his body in all directions. To protect himself from falling off the lorry and landing on his neck, he needed his hands to hold onto something. He chose the lesser evil and left his nose and ears uncovered. In that miserable condition, the escapee doctor continued his trip with those four people. On their way to Junaina city, the passengers of that truck faced many hardships and dangers that one needed to author another full-sized book to include all those natural and human disasters. Suffices it to mention a few selected troubles which may give some idea to the reader of what the fugitive lover of Ibtihal had gone through. Besides those natural hazards that the passengers had already faced, the lorry had the bad habit of breaking down every now and then. Whenever the engine died by itself, the male passengers had to push it a half-mile before the slow beast could be restarted. As if the lorry was a human being that always got thirsty and needed water, or otherwise it wouldn't move a span. Many times, its tires got stuck in the sand and the passengers had to dig and push them out. One could say without being accused of exaggeration that the passengers of that lorry covered half of the distance between Nyala city and Junaina city walking and running on their feet, while they were pushing and running behind that tortoise-like truck.